O'Reilly. Are your wiper blades chattering, skipping, or squeaking? Don't let streaks or smearing on your windshield compromise your visibility. When it's time to replace your wiper blades, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and see our selection. Our professional parts people will even install your new wiper blades while you wait. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
The Hunting Collective is presented by Element.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 143 of the Hunting Collective. I'm Ben O'Brien and I'm joined by Phil T. Engineer. Say hi, Phil.
I'm here. Hello.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I think this week has been, it's only Monday, but this week seems to have been pretty stressful for everyone in the office so far.
It's not working out real well for us. No, we're back at home. There is construction in the studio. There's smoke filling the air. We have some COVID issues, but here we are. And here's Ryan Callaghan. What's up, buddy?
Oh, the huge, I guess. Nothing. I wouldn't say the usual. I would say the opposite of the usual. It's September 14th, and I have not hunted a single day of September, which is, a lot of years I'm about 14 days behind where I would typically be. So
yeah, I feel like there is just an air of desperation right now, both to get out in the woods and to get work done and to produce these fine programs for all of you out there. So you'll have to excuse us if we're not already drinking. Because I've had a few White Claws already. I'm not gonna lie. Phil, are you sober?
I'm sober. I just finished a Gatorade Zero Sugar, if that counts.
I don't think that counts.
No.
Cal, what are you doing to cope with all this time not hunting elk and such?
I got the puppy, Snort, a little female yellow lab, and she's been awesome. I've been doing a lot of training with her. Then I've been working on the freezer situation, which, it's so funny. Like, I'm just now getting around to this. This is the very end this is the most bare freezer situation I've ever had in preparation for hunting season. Giving a lot of meat away at the beginning of COVID, like back in March or whenever that was. And I also, in preparation for some media that we were going to produce, like producing a bunch of like how-to sausage making stuff. I had like 60 pounds of sausage that I'd ground and mixed. So it was just game meat, and it's a mix of like antelope, little tiny bit of antelope, mule deer, whatever trim I had in there, a lot of elk trim and pork fat. And then that was going to be just our base. And then we're going to mix it with a bunch of stuff and do some sausage making content. And then, so I was like, I am not going to go elk hunting until that stuff is done. Because I had, basically 3 25-pound sacks of this coarse ground base in the freezer. And I got the very last of it cranking out today. So that's like my keep saying excuse for not being out hunting. It was like, hey, you made a plan, you're sticking to it. But at the same time, it's just, there's just a lot going on and trying to keep everything going.
I feel I mean, you're not missing too much. I got some stories for you guys from my first hunting forays of the season. I've had my dad in town for the last like 8 days. We hunted fairly hard. He's 67, and so there's a lot of places we couldn't go that could have been a little bit more productive than where we were. But we were into elk. There was a few not so sharp moments that I have to tell. There's stories I have to tell just because I'd feel guilty if I kept them to myself. But you're not missing too much, Cal. We ran into a couple of bugling bulls and had some action. But I think elk hunting's best days are yet to come. So you finish that sausage, you'll be just fine. Oh
yeah, man, and I'm super pumped I've been shooting the long guns a little bit. Mm-hmm. Slinging arrows in my garage, and if I, get the opportunity to archery hunt, I'll run out and hit up some spots that are typically good a little bit later in the season. Montana's got a long season, but yeah, man, it sucks not going to Idaho and running around, and I love early season elk hunting. I just really, really enjoy the first couple days of the season, first week of the season. But really looking forward to getting the dog out and, turning her into a good citizen, and have spent, a decent amount of time trying to line up some time on the calendar for dog hunting / training. And that's a difficult deal too, because it's like, I firmly believe there's very few people out there that when it's not their puppy are going to have patience to be out with a bird dog in training. Because it's like, well, this is my only weekend too, and watching you scream at your dog is not as much fun as I had envisioned today.
Yeah.
So.
What do you learn? I mean, like, people, for this show that haven't heard about Snort, give people a rundown of breed and how you came to acquire old Snort.
Yeah, so it's friends, Riverstone Kennels out of Wisconsin, and have had, some friends outside of those folks that have purchased their puppies in the past, and they've been really good dogs, and I've hunted with those dogs. And then I actually hunted with the mom of my dog, and these folks at Riverstone, they do a good job of checking in, right? They're like, you ready for a puppy yet? We understand. We get it. And then this year they're like, hey, this is going to be this dog's last litter. They typically only do 2 litters per female, but this is their dog, and used to be a buddy of mine's dog, and really, really phenomenal hunter. And they're like, we got your name on a puppy. Like, you just got to do it. Like, now's the time. And so, yeah, it was pretty funny when we first got cleared to kind of fly. It magically lined up with Delta just opening up the ability to fly with like a non-service animal. And so I flew to Minnesota, rented a car, drove to Wisconsin, picked up the puppy, flipped around, came back, stayed at one of the worst hotels I've ever stayed at. And that's including like a long line of like railroad flop house hotels in my youth.
Oh, wow.
That we'd stay in for hunting purposes. And man, this place was gnarly, laughably gnarly. And then
Don't skip over that part, Cal. I think gnarly hotel stays could be a regular segment on any podcast. But we need to hear this one.
So the dude, so it's like a family hotel, right? As in a family ran it, but it was just this guy. And there's like a sign on the desk that says, "These are the people checking in. Here's the keys. Like, don't bother me between these hours of the day." And so that's odd. And as I'm like hauling my bag in, this guy walks out the front door barefooted, and he's like, "You staying here?" I was like, "Yep." He's like, "Yeah, me too." He's like, "You ain't seen nothing yet." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So walk in, like grab my keys, sign my name, go down. I was bringing a bunch of fish back with me. So I wanted to have a refrigerator in the room, which they had a kitchenette room. And it was like, you just couldn't look that closely at anything because you just couldn't be there. So like, there's definitely some mold and some nastiness. And then I was up early the next morning, and I can hear somebody just like knocking on every door. Like, what the heck is going on? So I pack up all my stuff, go out. There's the other person staying there, the only other person that I saw in the little Mon Pa hotel the whole time. And he's like, "Hey, have you seen the manager?" It's like, "Nope, I haven't." And he's like, "Well, I'm locked out of my room, and I keep banging on his door, and nobody's answering. And like, my girlfriend's in there, and we got to get going."
Where's the girlfriend? In the manager's room or in his room?
In his room.
Okay,
and he was
thank
asking
God.
me if I had a screwdriver so he could like pop the door open and get in his room. And I didn't ask any more questions. I just said, "No, I do not have a screwdriver. Good luck to you."
Probably for the best.
But I did drive away thinking, I'm like, well, if your girlfriend's in the room.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Is she alive?
I do not want to be the one who then assists you to get in the room.
Yes.
It may be locked for a reason. But yeah, anyway, picked up the puppy, like walked her around a little bit. Got to hang out with her parents and watch them do some retrieves and stuff, and just, talk the bird dog stuff, the training retrieving setup, and then away we went. I borrowed Byron's fat cat soft kennel that they brought one of their cats up in, and had that smashed down in my bag, threw the puppy in that thing, hopped on the flight, and had a nice little layover in the Delta Lounge. Puppy's first pee was out on the tarmac in Salt Lake City. And which is funny. So they have like, it's a service animal relief area. And since it's not like in a secure area, it's literally out on the tarmac. Somebody who's working there has to take you out so your animal can relieve itself. I was like, "Hey, I got this little puppy here, and I'm sure she's got to pee." And he's like, "Ooh, yeah, I got like 5 minutes." It's like, "Let's go." So you like walk out onto the tarmac in Salt Lake City. She goes and does her thing. I don't want to like get in the habit of like yanking this puppy out of the kennel because I want her to have her little safe spot, So I like unzip the little cat door, and Snort, she wasn't even named at that point, like steps out and like looks around. I was like, nope, not for me. 90-degree tarmac in Utah. And, but eventually she came out, peed, and felt like we established some real trust there.
Well, and with any relationship, trust comes first. So we're glad. Do you feel like I remember one of the first times we had our new little format here? It was probably a year and some change ago. We talked a little bit about your love life and how you just felt that, you know, you're a lone ranger in many respects. Now you have a dog living with you once again, because you've had dogs in the past. So you feeling different now? You feeling different with this new relationship you got in your life?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, there's my days are much longer and not out of selfishness. So getting a lot done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the Snort plan? Like, do you have I know you guys have already been doing some training.
Yeah.
Is there a
So
hunt?
it's really interesting that the dog, she's like not that great of a retriever on land. Like, she has her big days, like her good days, in the spot that I always take her. And then I've been changing it up, like where we go river and water wise. Like, she's been swimming in the Missouri, and she's swam in the Yellowstone and East Gallatin and all over the place now. And she's like, goes like a bat out of hell and is very, very talented, very strong swimmer, like knows her pursuit angles, like just picked it up in 2 days of, you know, like training a dog in current is super, super important, both for the fact that you don't want them missing birds, but also for, you know, dog safety. I've seen firsthand where dogs spend the majority of their lives on ponds, lakes, still water, really slow moving water. And as a mature dog, even, that current can get them in a lot of trouble because they don't see danger sneaking up on them, you know, so entrapment issues. So it's very cool to see this puppy kind of doing the math, so to speak, right? Like seeing where the dummy lands, where she needs to enter the water, and what angle she needs to swim at to intercept the dummy as it moves towards her. And so it was just kind of this realization the other day. It's like, the reason that she doesn't like retrieving on land is because it's freaking boring compared to what we've been doing. She's like, I don't know. This is it. I got it. What else can we do? Is kind of the thing. So, which is like something, you know, I've trained a lot of dogs over the years, and it's just been a long hiatus since I've trained a dog. And, so it's retraining me as well. But it is fun to be, you know, my excitement over bird hunting has been nil since I'd lost my last dog. And now it's like very exciting. Like I said, I've put some effort into coming up with some, opening day plans and some trips and some ideas to get her going. So yeah, we'll do, opening day of waterfowl. We'll do, you know, try to get her out on some grouse yesterday. She did great. You know, she's young. She's only 5 months old. And so it's not like going out and expecting anything. It's just going out. My expectation is she's going to sit when I tell her to sit. She's going to come when I tell her to come, and that's about it. Right. So, yeah.
Well, have you been through the ringer with dogs before, especially with, you know, loved and lost? And I think it's a real popular and meaningful soliloquy for people when their dogs pass to kind of reflect on that. Does that change how you work with Snort? Like, you know that you kind of have loved and lost before, or you've been through the whole process of owning a dog, training a dog, and losing him? Does that change anything for you?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There's like, you know, there's a little bit of a, like, how close do I want to get to this thing? Like, clock's ticking, like 10 years, maybe, right? Could be a little longer than 10 years. Definitely under 13. You know, working dogs get beat up pretty good. Whole host of issues could come out of this, right? So, that's definitely in there. And then the comparisons when you're like analyzing character, because they're all individuals. And it's like, okay, is this dog going to be more apt to do this, less apt to do this? Is it a dog that's going to respond to discipline? Is it a dog that needs to be treated very delicately? Like, where are these lines and boundaries? And that's part of the fun and definitely the challenge. And those realistic expectations, right? Is like, all I want is to have a dog that listens, right? And that's a giant safety thing. And I've already run into some people on walks and stuff that are like, they're like, oh, geez, you don't need to yell at that puppy. That's just a puppy. And I'm like, well, your dog is not a puppy and it's a shithead.
Yes.
And I'm not
We
going
need
to
to
walk
talk
around.
about this.
I'm not going to
Me
walk
and Phil
around like that.
Me and Phil were talking about this earlier. I live in the suburbs, and the leash dogs off leashes are it's just a ridiculous thing. And I feel like a lot of times these dogs take on kind of the attentiveness of their owner in terms of their personality. Because if the dog owner is attentive to what that dog's up to and then making sure that that dog listens, then they're not going to have as many problems as if you just kind of write that off. Just dogs doing what dogs do. Next thing I know, my kid's getting whacked and, knocked over on the playground from a dog off the leash. These are very suburban problems, but nonetheless, there's a parallel. Oh
yeah. Well, take it out of the suburbs, right? It's like, if you can't recall that dog, rural roads are dangerous because intermittent traffic, like, just the dog is not aware of it. Nobody likes a flat dog, as I always like to say. And it's like, you got a lot of investment in that animal. Like, they're stupidly expensive, right? I'm not telling anything to you who has a couple kids now, but it's like, there's a significant monetary investment. And then obviously it's like, you love the damn things too. So, it pays to be disciplined. And my past dogs, if you put a leash on one, they acted like their soul just got crushed, because if you told them to walk at heel, they walked at heel. They didn't go to investigate anything unless you told them that it was okay. If they wanted to go do something, they looked up at you from heel and they're like, yeah, can we do this? Right. And so through training, there was a leash. Like, that dog was always in command. But that type of training is, a multi-year commitment, right?
Yeah.
And that trust is so tough, because when you are confident enough to walk a dog like that around, and there's, like, I'd walk them anywhere I was, any city I was in, that's how they were. And I'm sure, like, the casual looker on just assumed that dog was on a leash, right? But it's like, one screw up from that dog, it sees something, it chases something, whatever, and it, gets smashed by a car. That's not the dog's fault. That's your fault. And the first thing you think of is like, God, why didn't I have it on the leash? It's probably hubris, for the most part. Right. But it's like, there's a lot of, there's just like, you want that dog to perform in such a way. And it's definitely a reflection upon yourself. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of hubris in the game.
Now, Phil, do you feel like Mango? I don't know Cal, if you've ever met Mango
I've
or
never
know
met,
about Mango.
nor have I seen Mango.
Me either. So I'm not sure if Mango is even real. I'm assuming. I've seen photos. Phil, do you feel like Mango could ever cut it out on the water in the mountains, in the woods? Or is Mango just not built for it?
She definitely aims to please, and I think with, like, I'm not I couldn't do this because I'm not a professional, like, trainer of dogs, but I think with some work she would absolutely love to get out there and do some bird dogging, as you guys say. But yeah, it would definitely take some work though, because she's antsy. She is just a live wire. And we don't know what her life was like before we got her, because she was just picked up off of the Fort Peck Indian Reservation at a little over a year old. She gets very, very scared and defensive because she's pretty small. And so that's another thing we were talking about dogs on leashes. It's not just about your dog. Like, your dog could be the friendliest, nicest dog running around off of a leash, but if they approach, if an off leash dog approaches Mango, and we always have Mango on a leash, she just like completely just like melts down. Like she can't handle it. And so just don't just think about your dogs. Think about others' dogs and other human beings as well when you have your dog off of a leash. Anyway,
Well,
just bringing it back to that.
Phil, then you have to yell Mango out. Like if you're in the duck blind, you gotta go Mango, Mango,
and then everyone
And
turns
that's
and says, "What a great dog name!"
Yeah, they don't do that at all.
do.
Snort is a good thing to yell out. Cal, have you found like snort, snort? Like that's a good thing to scream.
It's pretty good. It's pretty sharp. Yeah, that's my rule, Rad. It's like you can pick whatever name you want. You just got to be comfortable yelling it at the top of your lungs in a very crowded place full of people who you do not know.
Yep. Phil, can you just give us one? Like if Mango's misbehaving, what's the tone that you use?
Mango. It's usually like a mango. That's the
Mango?
Yeah, that's the lilt there. No, you got it wrong, but you'll work on it. It's fine.
Mango? Did you do like a question
Mango.
mark?
No.
All right. That's fine.
Yeah,
you're not we'll bring Mango this year.
Oh, it's so cool. Like the thing that happens once with like working dog ownership is when you watch them put things together and like the big reveal, the coolest part, right, is you're doing all this work, which is a lot of times play. And then the dog's like, ooh, I like this. And you can see like their brains working and they enjoy figuring out the puzzle. Like, why do you put me in this box and then tell me to go? Why do you make me sit up, behind you on the stream bank and then let me retrieve? It's like all these things. And then like the very first duck, when the situation's right, could be the second or third duck, but it's right in that time frame. And the dog goes, grabs it, brings it back to you. And then all of a sudden it's like, you can see him kind of go like, oh my God, there's something about this I really, really like. And like that animal is then changed forever. And I've seen it on a handful of dogs now. But it is so freaking cool. It is so cool. Like they never look at a tennis ball the same way again. It's like, oh yeah, that is for play and play is great.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what I really want to do.
I have serious jealousy over Snort. I'm holding out my jealousy over Mango because I don't really know what Mango brings to the table necessarily. But I do, because I wanted to get a gun dog for years. I had a buddy who was offering me a fully trained British Lab a couple years ago, and my wife just basically said, well, we can get one, but the human children, we have to take care of those first. And as soon as you feel like we got a handle on that, we can get a dog. I've yet to feel like I have a full handle on it. And so no dog. I think we're going to have to wait till the kids are old enough to help take care of the dog. But for now, I just kind of have to have the Snort jealousy that I've got.
Well, the good thing
all the way around
is it's just like, having any sort of first time hunter in the field, like the best thing that you can do is leave your shotgun at home.
Yeah.
Right. So once things are right, and I'm confident that it's going to be a somewhat pleasurable experience, I'm going to need folks that want to go get a couple of birds so I can work with the dog and they can do the shooting. So
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
Phil has been, I don't want to say reluctant to do the work of the hunter safety course. I feel like he's been thinking about it, but finally recently he sent me a text or some sort of message that said, like, I'm doing it finally. I'm halfway through the hunter safety course, which I feel like, similar to Snort, getting that first retrieve right. I feel like Phil is coming around, and I'm seeing the joy in his eyes as he starts to think about what hunting might be like. So Phil, give us an update on your hunter safety course progress.
Okay, well, I'm still not finished, but I'm chipping away at it. It's definitely a lot. I mean, some of the quiz questions are a little silly, where it's like, what should you do with a gun? And it's like, answer A, point it at other people. Answer B, point it at your foot. Answer C, like, keep the muzzle pointed in the air and safely away from people. It's stuff like that. But I am learning a ton of stuff that I never knew, just like apart from the quiz stuff. Like I just finished the section just all about different kinds of like guns and ammunition. And as a person who just never grew up with any of that stuff, like family members I never grew up with guns in the house, never had family members who had guns. It's my only knowledge of firearms is through video games and movies. So just learning like what a gauge is and like different kinds of actions. I've been enjoying it. It doesn't feel like a chore, which I feel like it might for people who maybe grew up with hunting and they're like, oh, I got to go through this. But for me, I'm like, oh no, I'm just eager to learn all this stuff that I never knew about. So yeah, it's been good.
It's never bad to have a refresher, even for those of us that have been doing it for a long time, because there's not a lot of hunting camp conversations or hunting podcast conversations where we're talking about what a gauge is or discussing it. And so I know you know this, Cal. We've talked about this before, I think, on this show or somewhere. Teaching people is a good way to remind yourself of how much you know and how well you can articulate the stuff you think you know and how easy it is for other people to understand. That certainly helps me to understand what is a gun, what do you do with it. Well, if you got to explain to somebody who's never done it before, boy, that's a damn good way to get yourself acquainted with your own knowledge set, and a good reason to go mentor somebody. So, Phil, how many modules do you have left? Doesn't it come in modules?
Yeah, I don't remember how many there are. I want to say there's like 8 to 10. And I've got 5. I just finished number 4. So, yeah, I'm like somewhere in the halfway point. I'm not sure exactly where though.
No, we'll check back in with you when you're feeling like you're going to get done. Make sure don't take the test until we've talked about it, until we've discussed it, until you're confident. We cannot have you fail in the test, okay?
I will not fail the test.
This is important. We're going to take you hunting for the first time this fall. We cannot have you. We don't want you to look like a failure after all the time I've invested in training you.
So much time. I'd never let you down, Ben.
Yeah, please don't let me down. And by the by, Phil, Cal might not know this, but we have a listener by the name of Eric Hall who always sends us. He sent encouragement to Phil as Phil's going through the process of wanting to become a hunter. Just a quick message for Eric Hall. I haven't received an email for him in about 3 weeks, and after weekly emails for about a year and a half.
You know, Ben, I think we hurt his feelings when I said that we shouldn't feature him on the show as much.
I'm a little worried about him. And I'm wondering where he is.
Well, I just want him to know that, Eric, I would love for you to give us an update, and please keep calling and writing in.
Yeah, please keep leaving your messages. I miss you, frankly. And Phil's hunting process won't be the same without your commentary. So please come back. Hopefully Phil didn't upset you too much with his commentary. Cal? What do you need to tell Phil about this? What he's about to embark on? It's been so long we've waited for him to complete this hunter safety.
Well, just complete the hunter safety.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, get it done, son.
Here's the thing, Ben. I love you, but I think you're making a grave mistake in building this up so much. I think I'm going to be inevitably disappointed in some aspect in one way or another. I think we need to bring it way down, and that way my expectations will be exceeded rather than not met.
Your expectation should just be like, boy, it's nice to be outside. I took a big long walk yesterday morning, just picked a ridgeline and hiked it, and had a 22 on my back and stomped through a bunch of brush, looking for grouse for Snort, and just, walked straight up a mountain, turned around, walked down the mountain, and I came back without a bird or without firing a shot. It was just a walk, and I now know so much more about that area than I ever did before. Like, that's a win, and that's a great way to spend the time. I never would have gone up that ridge had I not been thinking, boy, that looks like there's a bunch of grouse up there.
Yeah.
So one thing I learned was I was wrong, but go ahead.
Phil challenges me all the time with that. Because I told him, like, hey, there's so many things we wouldn't get to do if we weren't hunters. And he's like, I don't believe it. He said, is that what you said, Phil? Because you said, I think you could just go and, just wander around the woods and you'd have the same experience.
I didn't say the same, but I'd say, I think my argument was that, like, there's many ways to, like, connect with the outdoors, and that don't end with you firing a gun, I think was, like, sort of what I said. But that sort of comes back to the point of why I think the expectations should be lowered,
Well, let me clarify something here. A lot of my stories at this point in my life, they start with firing a gun. Like the pack out situation, like what happens after you make the decision to pull the trigger or throw an arrow? Holy shit, man. That's when things get interesting. I mean, my God.
You're right. I got to tell you. So my dad comes to town, right? I feel like I jumped the gun in inviting him. He drew a general season elk tag, and I got so excited. I'm like, you have to be here on opening day, because why not? As soon as we can go hunting, we need to go hunting. Not thinking about, weather, rut activity, how easy or hard it would be to travel around the country in early September. I mean, we didn't have a great week of hunting. It wasn't the best week of hunting in terms of elk or no elk or excitement or no excitement. That being said, we had an awesome time. We got up early, we stayed up late, we drank, we laughed, we cried, we hiked around the mountains. I got a few stories from the week that I have to share, like I said. But by the by, I mean, I spent time with my dad, and I don't know of any other way. I've not experienced any other way. Him and I have spent time outside fishing, metal detecting, foraging, and a bunch of other ways. It never feels the same as it feels like when we're hunting. So, I mean, just that experience as compared to other experiences outside, it's not quite the same.
And I totally get that. I mean, I totally understand that when you're if you're out there hunting, your senses are calibrated differently than if you were to go for a hike or go fishing or go mountain biking or whatever. And that's sort of what I'm excited to experience. Just kind of looking and listening and smelling for different things.
That's a good way to put it, though. Senses are calibrated differently. I mean, that's a pretty good explanation of what is really going on there, because you certainly are. You walk down a road and you can smell where a bull elk crawl across the road. I mean, that smell hitting your nose is a sensory experience a lot different than if you weren't pursuing that animal and you smelled that same aroma. So that's definitely a big deal. And I would say, I guess I have to tell you, I don't know if I should even tell you this. Phil, I'll let you decide if you want to hear this or not. I had a little poop issue in the woods. It ended a hunt. It ended a day's hunt.
Oh, it ended a hunt.
Yeah, there was shit in the pants.
Okay.
And
Ben, I got to be honest. I don't know how many more shit stories I can take on this show.
I know. I think I was looking through Not So Sharp Moments before we hit record, and I'm like, not 80% of them involve someone shitting on themselves. And I don't know if I want to propagate that much shitting of the pants conversation for anybody who hasn't done it yet outside.
I mean, you are kind of reaping what you sowed right now.
A little bit. Cal, do you want to hear this story, or should I just save it for another time? Because it is extremely embarrassing.
Oh, I mean, I guess how much have you been? How deep are you into the poop issues? According to Phil, it seems like the smell still lingers from the last one.
Well, what I can tell you, Cal, is that Ben has lost a prospective podcast guest because he listened to the show and thought it was too juvenile.
Yep, I was just going to bring up that anecdote. Yeah, there was a very esteemed wildlife biologist, who I had asked to come on the show and talk about elk, specifically getting in the mind of an elk, what an elk is thinking, why it does what it does, et cetera, et cetera. He said that sounds very interesting, and then listened to an episode and said, this one's not for me. And I said, why? And he said, the poop stories.
See, I think that's why when you're looking for guests, Ben, I think you should curate your own list of shows that they should listen to. Like, here are a few examples of what my show is like. Otherwise, they'll listen to all the worst ones.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll leave the poop story out of this. Just know that it happened.
Save it for a rainy day.
I'm going to save it for a rainy day. But I will tell the story of our run-in with a grizzly bear. My dad and I's run-in with a grizzly bear, because I think that's important. Cal, you did an episode already of Cal's Week in Review in the Field, right? Where you were in Idaho messing around with grizzlies, right?
Yeah, yep. Yeah. Definitely not messing around, man. When you're dealing with grizzly bears, and I was with Idaho Fish and Game, and then several members of Idaho Fish and Game are on the interagency grizzly team. And So they're working hand in hand with biologists inside Yellowstone National Park, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and yeah, it like all very good folks, but you're dealing with an animal that commands a lot of respect on its own, and then it's also got a giant spotlight on it from the public, and so everything we did is very much like these are big, tough animals, and we were moving them around, and it was very amazing. I was impressed by everybody, like their professionalism in regards to that animal's well-being and safety. As far as like when you went to move an arm, you were reminded every time, and not in a "hey you idiot" type of way, but like a protocol sort of way. Like, now when you move the arm, like remember, like the joint swings out like this. Like, be very careful as you're moving the animal around and stuff like that. Yeah. So, and that was for a population dynamic study that's been going on since the 80s.
Yeah, those are interesting. I think talking about being able to, we live in a place where grizzly encounters are still rare in certain spots, but when they happen, we talk about them and you hear about them, and they're important because, just like you said, that human interaction with grizzlies and their own population dynamics are a huge part of the conservation element of grizzlies. I mean, it really is. How often do they run into humans is a big part of how we decide what to do in certain areas with grizzly bears, especially where you were, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, we were on the corridor, like the north-south corridor, that is West Yellowstone, the busiest park entrance. There's two ways to get to Grand Teton National Park from the same road. And then you have all the people that aren't there to visit, they're there to work or live. And it's, you're talking about millions of vehicles on the road alone. Like, so if you just want to narrow it down to like vehicle encounters with wildlife, that can be a pretty grisly stretch of road. And then when you branch that out into recreators, and again, you're talking a couple of national forests, 2 national parks, some state parks. You have a lot of people recreating out there, both in campsites and in dispersed campsites, plus the folks that are going out to, hunt, mushroom pick, all the fun things that can be found off trail. It is absolutely wild. And I'll tell you, we trapped a boar the very first day. These are all, live traps. And it was a 479 pound, 15-year-old bear. And it's a July. So they just got done with the rut mating season. So that bear had been working really hard, and it was, like an all-American athlete, right? 479 pounds is a big bear. And this is a big bear in the time of year where it really should be the skinniest bear. And so he was just probably starting to think he better start putting on a lot more pounds for the winter. And that was within, as the crow flies, half a mile from a pretty darn busy road. And then the other bear that we caught really about 24 hours later is all. So extremely fortunate for, our time frame, which doesn't leave that much time for patience. And the second bear was 22 years old, about 371, if memory serves, 371 pounds. Both of these bears have been collared and captured in their youth, one at 3, one at 5. And there's quite a bit of data on both bears. The second one more so, because it had actually been collared inside the park at 5 years old. And they knew, at least like general sense of where these guys traveled, where these guys spent their time. And I mean, they are the things that go bump in the night. Like they are these just big, wise grizzlies that are around people all the time. That 371 pound bear, I actually sent Mark Kenyon a picture of it and said, "Look what I caught today." Because it's on the road to the cabin that he has down there. And it's, it's a paved road. It's not that far. This particular road, spur road that we were on, isn't going to get you down to the river or something like that. But it's like, you do not have to go far to bump into a lot of people. And those bears are there, at that time of year all the time. So, and so no encounters. Like these are quote unquote good bears. They've never been in a trash can. They've never scuffed up a person. And, they're, like hands on is sometimes hands, feet, body on, working with these grizzlies. And both of their heads were just like piles of scars, just scar tissue on top of scar tissue. So they're not like some cartoon bear that's chasing butterflies. They're out there scrapping it up just like all the boar grizzlies are, fighting over territory, fighting over mates, fighting over food sometimes. And just very, very impressive animals. And they are closer than you could imagine to an insane amount of people. So,
yeah, that's a big thing. I can't wait to see what you guys put together off of that. Cause that's a big thing for me. A lot of the conversations we've had here on this show, and I'm sure around the Meat Eater universe, are kind of intangible looks at grizzly bears when you're talking about population dynamics and cohabitation and what should we do, what should we not do. But, to be able to put your hands on an animal like that while it's still alive and take its, and study it and look at it and just see something very tangible and then know where it is, where it's lived, where it's going to live, how many people it could encounter but probably won't. That's just a different perspective, a different level of perspective that I hope people get from that when it comes out, because that's a pretty damn cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, no, it was an incredible opportunity. And again, just impressive to be around folks that are just so professional. And, it really is go time, right? So there's a federal trapping season that all these biologists that are doing these types of studies, like it's trapping season. Just like if you were making money off the hides, these folks are like getting things prepared all year long for this live trapping season where they can go collect their data, or go get collars on bears to collect more data. Really, you're taking a lot of data when you're working up the bears too. But and it's just like very prepared, very efficient. Again, the animal's welfare is top of mind. You have an oximeter, so you're making sure that bear gets enough oxygen. You actually pull the bear's mouth apart and clip the oximeter on their tongue, which is pretty wild, right? Because these bears aren't... It's like they're badly, badly intoxicated. Like blackout intoxicated without the use of their muscles. But they're not technically asleep either, so there's a little bit of movement. There's definitely some noises. And they're like, yeah, Cal, go ahead and just, pry that bear's mouth open. And you're like, whew.
That's what I would have been like, yeah, you do that.
Will do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on my end, I've had one other, I had a grizzly bear encounter up in Northwest Territories that was kind of on a caribou hunt years ago. That was kind of got my hackles up a little bit, kind of scary, but nothing like the recent one here in our very own Gallatin Valley. And I'll tell you, man, like I have Joe Farinato, who's on this podcast and formerly a Meat Eater employee. Like he got charged with a bear earlier this year. Every time somebody around Big Sky or Bozeman or somewhere around here has a mix up with a bear, you hear about it. I mean, so it's definitely kind of a heightened part of my hunting life. But I mean, you grew up around here. Like, what are the changes before I tell my story? Like, what are the changes have you seen in terms of like the frequency that guys are getting, reported mix-ups or stories out there in the world?
I mean, there's no question the frequency has gotten, has cranked up, much more frequent. No question whatsoever. So like, growing up and running all over, wasn't even that concerning. Then started spending a lot more time at the Bob Marshall, where it's like, yes, there are bears here. Started working out of Glacier National Park. Yes, there are grizzly bears here. But in the Bob, it was like, oh, check it out, grizzly bear track. That's cool. Don't see that often. See one bear a trip, maybe, if you're out really hunting. And then it's like, you're going to see a bear a trip. And then there was 2 bears a trip and tracks on all the trails that we use, like all the heavy human traffic trails, lots of tracks. And there's some food benefit to that behavior. Unfortunately, like either, on hard years, they're going to be eating, scat from the stock, all the mule and horse poop, eating the leftover grain out of it, stuff like that. So there is some incentive to being where the people are on certain times of year. But if it's like that thing that everybody tells themselves where it's like, oh, they're more scared of you than you are them. It's like, well, just like anybody, they're not really looking to pick a fight, but if they need to be there, they're going to be there. So
I know grizzly bear sightings. When I first moved to Bozeman, I knew that it would be part of my hunting life at some level. But I didn't think it would be so forward facing as it has been the last couple of years. Pretty much everywhere I go, the fodder around town here on opening day is as much about grizzly bear encounters as it seems to be about big elk encounters. The folks I've talked to in the last couple of years. And this year for me so far has been about wolves and bears as much as it's been about elk. Because I don't know if I told you this or I don't know if I sent you the video, but I have numerous. I mean, I've got multiple, probably 15 to 20 trail cam videos of wolves on my trail camera up not too far from where I'm sitting right now, as a matter of fact. And so I spent a lot of my trail cam scouting prep time combing through predator photos and less elk. Not that I don't think there's a correlation there, but I shared this on social, but we had a pack of wolves running cattle I was about August 12th, running a bunch of cattle up and down this drainage where I've got my cameras, where I know there's a bunch of elk, and we ended up hunting and seeing a bunch of elk. So I have 5, 6, 7 videos of this all happening where it's pretty clear that one of these wolves takes down a calf and you can hear the calf bawling and then you can hear the wolves howling in the background. Some pretty eerie footage of, a big adult male standing looking right at the camera while his buddies are howling in the background. Shortly after, you can hear this calf bawling. And shortly before that, you can see these wolves chasing these cows up and down this ridge, this meadow where my trail camera is. So that was kind of my first interaction with this year. So we called the game warden. My buddy and I called the game warden, and I chatted with the local warden. And he was going to get a hold of the rancher and let him know this was happening, go in there and look for a kill site. And in the conversation I had with him, he said, man, look, these couple of drainages, these couple of canyons to the east of where you're hunting, there's been a grizzly bear spotted. So if there is a kill site there and you're going to go look for it, or you're going to be in that country where that kill site might be of these cows, just be careful, because grizzly bears are around. And so now I'm going into elk season like, well, I know that were some really good bulls in this one small kind of tricky little chunk of public. It butts up to private, but I know I can get in. But I also know it's a pretty high possibility I'm going to see wolves and or grizzly bears in this little zone. And, it's 30 minutes from my house, so it's a nice place to be, and it's easy to get into for my dad. So we hunted it, and we hunted it for a couple of days and had some good encounters. And a buddy from Meat Eater, somebody who you and I have worked with for a while, also knows about this spot, asked if he could go in there. I said, no problem, knock it dead. He goes in there, calls in a bull. His brother-in-law shoots this bull. That's actually, we should talk about that too, because we had hunted it 3 days in a row, and we had been on elk every day. We kind of had the lay of the land. We knew what elk were in there. We knew what bulls we wanted to target. We knew exactly kind of the game plan. It snowed. It kind of turned them off. We were going to pull out of there for a few days and let it calm down. And then our mutual buddy here at Meat Eater goes in and makes, I think he probably made 2 or 3 cow calls, and immediately 2 bulls run in and they shoot one. I want to say congratulations, and I did. But inside you're like, damn it.
Yep. You're like, no, I don't need the details. I don't need how many times the cow called or the yardage that the bull stopped. Let's just call it a day.
Or the fact that you were walking in on my tracks, walking in on the tracks I made earlier that day, and that I called all up and down that road and didn't hear shit and didn't see anything. Cut one fresh set of bull tracks. So anyway, that's hunting. That's public land hunting. That's part of it. So I was happy for a buddy to get a bull. But anyhow,
it is funny though. I got to tell you, when I was taking Snort out there, to look for grouse, just a couple hours, there's a big part of me that was like, God, I hope I don't bump into any elk. Like, I just mentally, I'm not sure I can handle it, and stopped up on top of the ridge and in another spot where I was like, this thing should be full of blue grouse. And I could hear very, very clearly another hunter let go with the little bugle. I was like, thank you. So then I can mentally be like, it's overrun with people anyway. Don't want to be here.
Well, that's it, man. Every time I'm in a camp with somebody, they're like, they already killed their elk, or they already got a deer on the ground. I'm just going to go sit out, and I'm here anyway. Wow, traveled all this way to be in some camp with a bunch of other guided hunters. Shot my bull on the first day. I'm going to just go walk around. Like, don't ever do that, because you're going to see the biggest bull, the biggest buck of your life. Don't ever give yourself this opportunity, because it's going to happen. If there are elk gods and deer gods, they want to mess with you, and they will send that giant buck after you've filled your tag, or if you're just out taking your dog for a walk during the season. It will happen.
Yes. But, it's like one of those things. It's like getting something big and giant may not be as addicting as missing something big and giant. Right? Where you're like, now I have to come back.
Oh, I'm right there, man. My dad and I had a pretty good start to this season, but mentally right now, I'll finish this grizzly story, but mentally after, Buddy goes in, gets a bull after having a bunch of close calls. My dad's bow string jumped off the cam when we had a bull at 100 yards. So we had to take a day off of hunting to get his bow fixed. And like all these things add up to this immediate, like, I'm feeling deadly. I am ready to find some damn success, and I'm going to charge harder than ever to figure it out. So I don't mind that mindset. I don't mind going into it like, this is going to happen. If I need it to happen, I gotta, all these things can't be for nothing.
Yeah.
That's the mindset.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today. Because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
So we go, we're in the same drainage. So we have the option to kind of leave this little drainage, this little honey hole we have, rest for a few days. After somebody drops a bull in there, it runs down to the bottom. My immediate thought was, there's a fresh carcass, there's a fresh gut pile there. This guy works at Meat Eater, so there's not a scrap of edible flesh there, but there's still plenty for a grizzly bear to claim, and there's plenty for wolves to circle around and feed on.
Oh, yes.
So I talked to my dad. I said, here's the deal. We can go in there and check this out. There's a different side of the road that we can go on. We can go on the east side of the road, around where this carcass will be, and we'll have a good chance of running into a bull. But it's sketchy. I know there's grizz in there. I know there's wolves. If we shoot another elk, now there's two carcasses within 5,000-6,000 yards of each other. We're gonna have to be slick in getting it out of there. We're probably gonna have some sort of entanglement with one of these critters. And then the guy who shot the bull sends me a text, hey, man, I just want to let you know there were wolf tracks on top of our fresh tracks in the snow in between our two pack-out trips. So there was wolves trying to find that carcass from the time they took the first load out to come back and get the rest of the meat. There was already wolves on this carcass.
Wow.
And I already know. Yeah, man.
That's
and this
wild.
pack of wolves has been in there a while. Yeah, so they kill this bull 500 yards up the drainage from where my trail camera sits. And so that pack of wolves is thick, and they're sticking in there. There's plenty for them to do. But then I also know from the game warden that there's a big boar grizz hanging around the area, and I know that a grizz can smell a pin drop of blood from 6 or so miles away. And so I'm pretty sure something's going to go down if we go back in here the morning after somebody shot a bull in this drainage. So my dad and I talked about it. He's like, just grab a pistol and let's go. We'll try to avoid it. Yeah, we know there are elk in here. Let's try to get one. And so I agreed. Like, I grabbed the Taurus. I just got a new Taurus 44 mag. And by the way, like, I feel like 44 mag is the minimum bear defense pistol, but I've got 2 or 3 other pistols that I could have taken, but there is no ammo in Bozeman. Have you tried to buy ammo lately, Cal?
I have not at all. Not at all.
I went to a few local places trying to find 357 or 10, and there was nothing. I mean, like 2 boxes on the entire row of shelves for ammo.
If you need either of those, I do. Just an odd thing. My grandpa gave me his 357 and a couple of boxes of ammo a couple weeks ago. So
I need it.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to. I think I got a box 10 mil too. So
that's what I'm going to need to do. But I had a 44 mag, and I'm like, I'm confident that that'll stop it at least. Although it's not preferable, it'll stop it. So I loaded that up, put it in the holster. Bear spray on one, bear spray on left hip, holster, pistol on the right. We get going. We're hiking out. To make a long story short, we're hiking up to a glassing point where we can look down over this entire drainage down into this private land where these elk come up from. And about 10, 15 minutes into our sit, I look to my left. Up this ridge about 700-800 yards is one of the biggest bulls I've ever seen on public land. I mean, this is a pretty damn giant 6x6. He's kind of just stomping. He looks pissed off. He's stomping across this ridge away from us. So I go to get my dad. I'm like, let's go. We're going to try to cut him off. And we start running down the road to cut him off. Well, I just stopped to check the wind. Our wind is totally wrong. It's blowing right to where he was headed to. Feeling kind of screwed. So I just stopped. We had a little debate. I said, let's back out. Let's go back down to where we were and try to call him back around to us because he's going to wind us if we blow this ridge. So we got to go back. So we turned to go back, and as we turned, I stopped once to call a few through 3, 4, 5, 6 cow calls across this ridge just to try to get his attention as we kind of retreated to get the wind right. And I look across this ridge, and like under some pine trees is this big shadowy figure starts running down the hill. And my first thought was bear. And my second thought was that must be the elk. I mean, that was right where the elk was. That had to be him, but it kind of looked like a bear. And I told my dad, I said, I'm not sure what that was. I think it's our elk, but it also could have been a bear. Let's run down here anyway and set up in case that was the elk, which how could there be a big bear and an elk standing in the same damn spot? So we run down the ridge. We set up. I'm doing some cow calls. I'm looking down the ridge. I go to move a little bit, and I look down, and like 100 yards below us is the biggest damn grizzly bear I've ever seen. I mean, the biggest. I don't know. I'm not a grizzly bear expert. I haven't laid hands on them like you, Cal, but I just look like a tractor, like a furry tractor. I've never seen anything like it. And I think luckily for us, I think he was obviously coming to the cow call. I think luckily for us, there was a carcass up drainage, and he turned to head that way instead of coming up to check us out a little bit more. But I got the opportunity to watch this giant bear waddle away, like swaying back and forth. His freaking shoulders are bowed out. Watching him in the glass, trying to figure out if he's a grizzly bear. Of course, see the giant hump, blocky head, this big swayed belly, 700-800 pound grizzly, easy. Biggest thing I've ever damn seen.
It is an interesting thing too, right? Because we had that snow come through last week. Higher elevations. Obviously, it was a little bit colder, a little bit longer, a little bit more snow. There's still quite a few berries out, but you get that couple nights of hard freeze, which I mean, it froze, got below freezing in town 3 nights in a row, 4 nights in a row, right?
Yep.
So yeah, those higher elevations, I'm sure that berry crop started to drop off the bushes, and we still got a long way to go before those bears would really want to den up.
Oh, yeah.
So those carcasses are going to be real valuable.
Yeah, I could, and it was something, I don't know if you've ever kind of run into this, where I knew in my head I was like, man, I put 2 and 2 together, and it equaled 4. I'm like, man, this is really not a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were walking into a very high probability of having an encounter here, and I don't want to. I just don't want
absolutely.
to. Yeah, and we did it anyway, and we did.
Working with those guys on the Grizz team, are full, like, hunting, great. You know what really sucks? People leaving their goddamn trash out. Those bears, we have to shoot because they will do whatever it takes to keep eating human food. And it starts with people leaving their trash out. And it's like the stupidest, selfish thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Well,
it's people, right? It's like it's people in every, and I've had, you know, a handful of encounters that, you know, I've had one encounter out of several that was just a true, like, oh God, neither of us saw this coming. Right. But, and, you know, I had one where had I been walking 10 yards down the slope versus on top of the ridge, I would have just been walking on a sow and 2 cubs trail with steaming shit on it, you know? And I would have been like, oh, I'm not going to follow them, you know? But yeah, man, there's a lot of woods out there, and there's a lot of things that you can do to like mitigate these things from happening. And I always feel like, you know, Ranella always quizzed me on this because I get very analytical about these situations because I don't know what the long-term effects are of having close encounters with these bears. Are they then going, that wasn't as big a deal as I thought? And are they going to be more aggressive to somebody else, or are they going to run over somebody else? Or, you know, what is the long-term effect of a bear charging somebody, and its next encounter? Like, what is the relationship, if any?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, like I said, most people are relatively rookies when it comes to these encounters, I would hope. And I still was struck by this initial fear, realizing, oh, that was a bear charging down a ridge, come to check me out, thinking I was a cow elk. It's the biggest bear I've ever seen. And that is as it started to kind of waddle away and the sun was hitting it. And we started to talk about, you know, is it a grizzly, is it a black bear, see the hump, you know, see the profile, then later saw its tracks, confirmed it. It's like you're in all of it. You're excited to be seeing it. Now it's the highlight of your trip. And I think that, just me personally, that's a thing that you got to struggle with, because I'd love, that was one of the coolest things that's happened to me in the woods in my entire life. But there was a moment there where I was replaying all the podcast guests I've had on here who've gotten maimed and mauled and irrevocably, you know, damaged physically by these bears. So it's like you got to figure out at what point are you willing to take that risk, and if you go out in the woods knowing every single time that you might run into a grizzly bear, man, how can that not change your attitude toward what you're up to? I mean, damn.
Absolutely.
And I have never seen a bear like that in my life. I mean, I wish I would have my phone scope and I could share the video. I have the track. I sent it to a couple of biologists, and both of them were like, "Yeah, that's a big one." I was like, "Thanks, appreciate that." But yeah, it's just something to know. And I will tell you the other thing that we were just talking about before we get going here is the same spot, the same piece of public land. I have been posting about all the trash I find at this place. And like I said, it's a nice honey hole. It's a beautiful place. I love going there. It's right close to where I live. So I care a lot about it. I've had a lot of awesome stories to tell from just going there a few years. There was a mattress in the middle of the road not too long ago, a dirty ass mattress that looked like, I mean, it was used, Why it was there, no, there's no way to know why somebody brought it there. I mean, Cal, Phil, you have any guesses as to why a mattress would be in the middle of the dirt road on public land, national forest?
Costs $15 to take it to the municipal dump.
I mean,
that's just too much money. I have no guesses. No.
We also had recently a 1980s stationary bike. If you want to see it, you can go to my Instagram. Was also, I mean, not even, it's like right off the road, but somebody had to drive it all the way up there and dump it on public lands. Right over the hill from that, in a place where I've looked for elk before, is a literal camp that has, if you go there, you can, hopefully you never do and never find my spot, but if you walk 5 feet without seeing a Mountain Dew can or a Keystone Light can or a White Claw, shout out to White Claw, please sponsor us. If you don't go 5 feet without seeing an old can, there's American flag, like folding chairs up there just thrown in bushes. There's old tents. There was a whole case of Ensure that somebody had partaken in there. I'm not sure if like the kids are drinking Ensure now with their Mountain Dew, but this is where this is. I mean, and this is close to town. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I'm telling the story to say it's disgusting, and anybody that talks about loving this country and loving its public lands, I'm glad to take you here and show you what the wrong version of this looks like. That's for sure. Yeah.
It's just yeah, man. I do not. It's these people think very little of themselves when it comes down to it.
They must. Yeah, the effort to bring up a 1980 stationary bike and throw it on public land has to be the same amount of effort it is to drive it to the dump or put it on eBay and try to sell it or do anything. It's just like intentionally lazy. It's almost like throwing, these places back in our faces to say, well, if you're going to let me do whatever I want on within the law, I'll take advantage of the goodwill. It's sad to see. So if you see it out there, man, clean it up. I especially see it. We've talked about this before. I especially see it on shooting ranges. It seems public land shooting ranges in the West are always full of garbage, one way or the other. That seems to be common. So we can all do a little bit of something to help out and clean up. So that's my rant. It's over now.
It's a good one. It's well worth beating into the ground, man, because it's so. It's just so bad, and I'm reading weekly. There's a lot of people outside, and it's like we got to harp on this stuff because, it's great that people are out there partaking in these resources, but they got to understand that nobody's going to come in and clean up after them, really. So they need to do it when they're out there and be good stewards of the land and figure out what that actually means, Yeah,
and I'll tell you, my dad and I were leaving. This is actually the day we had the grizzly bear encounter to bring this all back together. We were driving out on the main road where the stationary bike was trashed. And there was an old man. I didn't stop. I really regret not stopping and talking to him. There was an old man, a shirtless old man. He kind of looked like an old Ryan Callaghan. If you picture like a 85-year-old shirtless Ryan Callaghan with like the perfect tan, he was out there with a big gravel shovel going through these like little shitty campsites where people and he was shoveling out all the ashes and the broken glass and putting them in a trash can, picking up cans.
Wow.
It was just like an angel come from above to eliminate. And the sad part is a couple days later, I'm up there and all the stuff he had done had been replaced with new garbage. But there was some guy, I should have talked to him and got his name and give him a shout out, but looked like he was up there to do exactly what we should all do every once in a while. Just go clean up, places where you can go hunt and fish and hike. So I should have stopped and talked to him, but he had a flowing mustache, much like yours, Cal, although it was gray.
That's so horrid. We're good for that guy. Wherever you are.
Yeah. Love you, buddy.
Beers on
Love
me.
You. Angels in the outfit. All right. Well, we're going to let you go, Cal. Did you take a COVID test? Have you taken a COVID test yet?
I go in tomorrow for a COVID test. Yep.
So you're feeling fine. Just precautionary.
Oh yeah, it's pretty wild where they're at right now. It's like, so these are the symptoms, and then here's everything else we could possibly think of that could be symptoms. And we're sitting in this soup bowl of smoke right now, and it's like, oh, if your eyes are itchy, that could be COVID.
It's a hell of a time to have allergies, man. If you got allergies right now, you're a persona non grata. Stay home.
Yeah.
Don't go out sneezing on people.
But no, I'm feeling good. And the reality is, it's like, myself I can deal with. I'm very comfortable with myself. What I do not like the idea of infecting somebody else, just because of my own selfish actions. So I'm being serious. So I'd like to get a clean bill of health back, and then adhere to the rest of this 14-day quarantine. And
do your thing. I mean, I did that. I traveled to the back 40 for some filming with Mark Kenyon, and then listeners will remember the episode we just did in Louisiana with the swamp people, Troy and Jacob Landry. After I got back from that, I kind of self-quarantined and took a test and came back negative, just to be deliberate, and for the reasons you said, man. That's a time where we got to watch what we do for the sake of others, ultimately. So glad you're doing it, and I'm sure you'll be negative. Yes,
the trick is staying positive until you're negative, right?
That's damn right. And by the by, go listen to this past Sunday's episode of Cal's Week in Review. You got to hear about the scrotum frog from Lake Titicaca and the porn website that's raising money.
By the time I got done with that episode, I was like, boy, this is possibly the most racy episode of Cal's Week in Review without trying to be. So
yeah, well, you'll hear it. We're not going to give you the whole thing, but just saying, Cal had to introduce a story about a scrotum frog in Lake Titicaca.
It's so funny too. Like, how much research can you do? You're so limited, because it's like, hey, we're all working on work computers.
Yeah.
Right? It's
yes. You can't go to the site and see what it said about the porn drive. And so, if you want to hear about that, the one and only place to do that is Cal's Week in Review. You bastards, go over there. If you're not listening to that, you're stupid. You're just stupid. It's your fault. You should feel bad about yourself. So go and do it. Ryan Callaghan, appreciate it, brother. Go get healthy and then hunt some elk and keep us updated, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks a bunch. You guys have a good day.
All right, dude. See ya.
See ya, Cal.
That's it. That's all. Another episode in the books. Phil, we love Ryan Callaghan. But we have a little explaining to do, don't we, Phil?
Yeah, this wasn't the plan for this week, was it?
We built something up, didn't we? We built up some suspense. And I've had lots of messages from people that were excited about today's episode for a particular reason. And that's because we said Paul Bashir, who's the founder, one of the co-founders of an animal rights group, a rather controversial and radical animal rights group, Anonymous for the Voiceless, was going to be on today's show. But it turns out, now we have to say that I did do the interview, right? You've not heard it yet, Phil, obviously.
I have not listened to the whole thing, but I have some audio from it.
So we had to make a decision. We've had the shittiest week here, not going to lie. Construction in the studio. Cal's got COVID lockdown. Most of our office has COVID lockdown. And the air outside is filled with smoke from the Western fires. And we had a really interesting, dynamic, crazy interview with Paul Bashir that we couldn't share with you because we can't get the audio right. So we had the option to kind of share some crappy audio with you or hold it for later. And I'm choosing to hold it for later because I want to make sure you guys hear all of it. and there's no complaints. Because I think it's an important conversation. So, you have any immediate thoughts from what you heard there, Phil, that we can tease people whenever we finally get the audio right and could send it out to the internets?
I haven't listened to it yet, but there's one point where I was kind of scrubbing through it, and I think you say something like, listen, I applaud vegans, and then Paul asks you well, then why aren't you a vegan?
That's funny.
And then I stopped. I did not finish. I didn't wait for your answer because I was like, oh man, this is good. This is gonna be good. But I
think my simple answer is something like, I enjoy my omnivory, and I'm not. There's no reason for me to stop it, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
It's an interesting conversation, and the reason why I wanted to hold it was because it starts out a little combative. Like, you could tell Paul didn't want to answer my questions. He wasn't sure where this was going. He wasn't sure if this was some kind of gotcha interview where I was gonna try to make him look stupid. But over time, I think both of us, I wanted to be conciliatory and wanted to tell him I do appreciate what's going on here, some of it, but there's a lot of this that just doesn't make sense. So let's talk about that part. But I think by the end, he thanked me for the conversation and thanked me for my perspectives. And that was the most amazing thing that has ever happened to me in 140 some episodes of doing this show. Because what you'll find out about their organization and about their belief system is it's hard to let people in when you feel like millions, billions of people are murdering millions of billions of animals for their own personal pleasure and gain. And so when you come to those conversations with that worldview, it's really tough to come across the aisle and meet someone where they are, particularly me as a hunter. And so I felt like we got somewhere in that sense. And so I'm sorry that you're not listening to it right now, that you're listening to me talk about it, but we're going to get it figured out. Phil has some magic audio dust that you can sprinkle on it, right, Phil?
Yeah, just hold your horses. The interview is we have it, and we have an okay recording of it, but something I wasn't able to make it into the studio when Ben did the interview, and then Ben was having issues with the way we normally record phone calls and Skype calls. And so we have a version of it that if need be, we'll drop, but we're going to try and see if we can get a better audio quality version for you all.
We're going to do it for you. So maybe next week. Either way, I'm headed up with the great Clay Newcomb to go to my very long-awaited Missouri Breaks elk hunt this week. And so you will follow along on the social medias, and then check back with us for that story as well. So we got a lot coming up for you in the weeks to come. The return of Ask the Eagle and Yanni Patelis, who's on the board. He's got an elk on the ground. We'll talk about that. Many, many, many things to do. And you also might hear about my not-so-sharp moment of when I pooped my pants a couple of days ago in the woods with my dad. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to tell it. It's pretty embarrassing. I'm a 34-year-old man, and I pooped my pants. And so I'll think long and hard about how to share that experience with you. But before we do that, before we let you go, play the jingle, Phil.
What?
Work sharp, not so sharp moments, sharp so you don't have to be. Season 2! Yeah!
I threw that out at you at the end. We don't normally do this at the end.
Man, you caught me off guard.
But we're doing it right now. We're another episode of Not So Sharp Moments, sponsored by WorkSharp. Thank you to WorkSharp for bringing it all home for us. And we are going to read you a wonderful story. Now, again, I had a lot of Not So Sharp Moments stories that involve poop, and I'm going to leave them out. I don't want to go too far. But this one doesn't involve poop. It's pretty good. It's from Tom Spring. Tom says, despite a lifetime in the outdoors, I've only been hunting since I was about 24 years old. And I'm going on just about 7 years now of hunting. My first mentors were coworkers who were gracious enough to show me the ropes. First was small game at various state recreation areas here in Michigan. Next came the late antlerless deer season. Toward the end of the December, my boss's boss's boss and another senior coworker let me hunt their family property. Ooh, see, that's Tom. Hunting your boss's property is trouble. That's trouble. I hope that's not where this is going, but boy, you don't want to get work and hunting tangled. There's too many emotions. Hey, we go on. By this point in the season, there weren't many people still out hunting. So one Sunday, I got to enjoy another hunter's permanent blind that they were apparently no longer needing. I had never shot a deer before, and this being southeast Michigan, I had only ever sat in blinds over bait piles. So far, just a handful of times. Sadly, to no avail. My dad's old wingmaster loaded with old slugger rounds, and it was unchanged since the 1970s, but no less reliable. Sometime around 3 p.m., a doe, what I would later, with the benefit of experience, realize was probably a 1.5-year-old deer, came fearlessly bounding toward me down the 2-track that led up to the side of the wooden box blind. I don't remember if I deliberated, justified, or just reacted, but I shot at just a slight downward angle where the narrow path kinked. If it reacted physically, I missed the cue. All my untrained eyes followed was its steady retreat up the rutted road, around the curve, and out of sight. What laid beyond the bend was a proper dirt road and a field filled with scrap and debris. I took a moment to collect myself, believing I'd screwed up because it hadn't dropped immediately in its tracks. I safetied my shotgun and stepped out into the stale gray afternoon twilight. Approaching the rutted, depressed trail, I immediately spotted what looked like drops of blood. Good news. It was! A lot of blood, actually. I couldn't believe it. But a clear trail was visible leading up to the 2 tracks and toward the private farm road I'd followed to get here. I launched ahead, focused on the blood, on finding its source and its final stroke of color, now only imitating life on the crusted, week old snow. When I got to the road, the trail disappeared. There were 3 main directions it could have gone, but a lack of obvious tracks and blood made me distrustful of the easy paths. The swamp was my fear, and even worse, houses eventually on the far side of that swamp. At a momentary loss, I called my coworker who owned the property and told him what had happened. He said he'd be there when he could. They were at the other end of the property helping another hunter get a deer out of a steep ravine it had expired in. By the time I saw their headlights, it was after sundown. I walked my coworker and the son down the path to where it abruptly ended, and the 3 of us spent an hour and a half trying to track the trail again. It had rained and sleeted a little in the meantime, and the blood didn't look as fresh as it did in the daylight. I had to leave, but my coworker said he'd check again in the morning. I told my boss's boss what happened, and he said it'd be all right. I just can never hunt with my boss's boss. I can't do it, Phil. There'd be too many emotions going on. I don't want to shoot the wrong deer. I don't want to be made to look like an idiot. And I feel like Tom is headed that direction here. Because so far it's pretty sharp. Everything seems fine.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the drop off here.
Yeah. I lived about an hour away, but it just so happened the next day, Monday, was the start of a company planning retreat held at a resort upstate. My coworker wasn't required to be there until Wednesday and lived on the expansive property, so I didn't feel too bad about leaving the investigation in his hands, especially since there didn't seem to be a trail to follow in the first place. A mystery that would rob me of all but a few hours of sleep that night. You'll figure this out, Phil. When you have a wounded animal out in the woods and you have no idea what to do, it's desperate, especially if you're a new hunter like this guy. The next day passed without any word from the coworker, and the knot in my stomach continued to grow. After dinner, the big boss arrived, coming from a day of meeting with board members. The evening presentation was mid-PowerPoint, and seeing me after he stepped through the big double doors, he waved and beckoned me over. Still standing in front of the only easy exit in his winter gear, a serious and, dare I say, ominous look on his face. That wasn't a deer you shot. Time stood still, my mind raced. Fight or flight itself became a lie. I was frozen in place, unable to defend or retreat. Did I shoot a dog? A person? Did the gun jerk high and overshoot the depressed spot in the past, sending me a rifle slub up into the fragile yonder? Before I could run away, dye my hair, and change my name, my boss's boss continued. Schmitty shot a doe out of the blind Saturday evening. He backed his truck up to load it. The trail of blood drops you saw were just drips from his tailgate as he drove out on the road. I don't know how long the pause was, but the first noise I could muster was to laugh, loudly and inappropriately laugh, at myself, and in complete and utter relief, I wouldn't have to flee to Canada. Later that season, I got my first deer and have never stopped trying to learn all I can, spending countless hours in the woods with many highs and lows to show for it. I don't know how many people, my coworkers, I've shared this story with, but no matter what, the relief, like waking up from a bad dream, will always outweigh any embarrassment from my not-so-sharp moment. Tom Spring. Play the jingle, Phil.
Work sharp, not so sharp moments, sharp so you don't have to be. Season 2! Yeah!
I feel like that was okay. That was mildly not so sharp.
Sure, I mean, there was some shoddy detective work, but besides that,
Nothing to be embarrassed about.
I'll give it this. It was not a poop story, so...
That's what you'll give it. And grading its
5 out of 5.
And grading its effectiveness. Tom's story did not involve poop, even though we're talking about it now, so it kind of did. Thank you, Tom. And if you have some time, Tom, go to Work Sharp's YouTube page. They have weekly hot tips on how to keep things sharp, everything in your life from axes to knives, on down the line. And you're going to get a Work Sharp field sharpener for all your troubles. And again, we're going to try to keep these things clean going forward with our not so sharp moments as we enter the fall months, certainly. All right, before we go, I got to tell you, this entire time I had a couple of White Claws, but then I made a Salty Gilbert, so now I'm sipping on a Salty Gilbert, Phil. It's the only way I can really get through this day. It's been a tough day, buddy. So this Salty
I've
Gilbert,
got something that might cheer you up a little bit more. Have you been to the office recently, since before we started construction?
No, I have not.
I left something on your desk, which means it probably got moved somewhere. But I just wanted to shout out Mike and Andrea, who run Freestone Designs. It's a t-shirt clothing printing company here in Bozeman. They sent us a couple of t-shirts.
Oh, they did?
They did. It's a pretty cool design. There's a bear. He's wearing sunglasses. He's floating on a tube in some sort of body of water, drinking a White Claw.
Yeah.
It says "Getting Clawed in Montana."
Perfect.
So that's waiting for you somewhere in the office if it hasn't been stolen by a contractor who's punching out walls in our building.
Yeah, if I see like a construction guy dressed in one of these t-shirts, I'm gonna be upset. But I will say, by the by, White Claw probably is never gonna sponsor me. I sent him a few messages. We've inquired via professional channels. It just doesn't look promising. But the fact that Element has brought their own salty recharge to the table to include with my White Claw makes me feel good about what I'm drinking. And this salty, right now, if you can hear the ice in my glass, the salty, beautiful mango recharge is really helping me out, Phil.
I've been having one of those Element recharges pretty much every day since you gave me that box.
Have you?
I have, yeah.
Well, that's good times. Well, Phil, I'm going to enjoy this cocktail. We're going to let everybody go. But if you have your Work Sharp field sharpener, if you're feeling sharp, you got to also go to drinkelement.com/meateater, drinklmnt.com/meateater. Check out everything Element does. They support us. Please support them. We can't do this without our sponsors. We can't do this without Element. So hit that website up. There's some pictures of me drinking stuff there and hunting. You're going to love that. And again, we have a website, which is amazing to me that anyone would want to put my picture on anything, let alone an internet website. So go there, support our sponsors, particularly our friends at Work Sharp and Element Tea. Keep us hydrated, keep us sharp. So we'll see you next time, Phil. Say bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Without doing wrong. Without doing wrong. Without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.